Well, it's 11 o'clock p.m. Central Time, and I guess it's time to record a video because Caleb Wilson decided to be the second coming of Steph Curry all of a sudden overnight, which is something I have to talk about. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about Caleb Wilson as a player coming into the league. Now, like a lot of the other players in this draft, I felt like Caleb Wilson had a really high ceiling, and I still do clearly think that he has a really high ceiling. I actually had him number 3 on my big board behind Darren Peterson, AJ Tapansa, right? And then I had Cam Boozer just below him on my big board. But there was a couple questions coming into the league, and the main one with Caleb Wilson is his three-point shot, right? But to me, it didn't really deter me because everything else with him was just so buttery smooth. Something that I felt like was going to transition perfectly into the NBA. And I felt like the Chicago Bulls, which obviously was a team that ended up getting him in the draft, ended up getting a steal, right? Even though he went 4, and you're like, how can he find a steal at number 4? To me, just like an AJ or Darren Peterson, I felt like there's a good chance he could have been a number 1 overall pick in a different draft class, right? So to me, he's a guy that I feel like has a ton of potential and a franchise player potential. And I'm talking like not just like, no disrespect to LaMelo Ball on my favorite team, but like a LaMelo Ball where he's kind of like your franchise player, but is he really like the guy that's going to lead you to a championship? Like we saw with LaMelo Ball where everybody consider him the franchise player, but he, obviously eventually gets traded, or maybe even a Karl Anthony Towns in my situation where he is your franchise player, but is he really like the guy? I mean, great player, ended up winning a championship clearly, but he wasn't the number 1 option. So to me, Caleb Wilson isn't like a guy has the potential to just be a second option on a championship team. He has the potential to be a number 1 option on a championship team to me. I think he has that type of potential both defensively and often on the offensive end. I think the way that he plays physically is very important in this league, and I think for him, as long as he can continue what we saw defensively in college in the NBA, I think he's a guy that could genuine be an all NBA perennial guy. At the minimum, he could be a multiple time All-Star in my opinion. But we saw in game 1 of his summer league action, similar to what we were seeing in Darren Peterson, which I just posted a video about, subtle plug there, but he's a guy that just comes out, shooting lights out. I just dropped that video where I said Darren Peterson's answering all my questions about who he is as a player. Caleb Wilson's kind of doing the same thing. Obviously only 1 game, but I mean, we're talking about a guy that I had questions about shooting the basketball, and I mean, I'm not talking, hey, mid-range shot, whatever, like, is he Tim Duncan? Like, love to the GOAT, Tim Duncan, right? But that's just not very popular in today's league. The mid-range shot has pretty much become phased out due to analytics, which is unfortunate to me. I love the mid-range shot personally. Some of my favorite players of all time have, specialized in the mid-range jumper, but, that's kind of a topic for a different day. But Caleb Wilson, to me, if he could shoot, beyond the 3-point line, that would be such a huge development for Chicago. And I didn't expect it to happen in year 1 because he shot, 25% from 3 at UNC this past year. But I thought, hey, if we're talking, when it comes around to his contract extension, his rookie contract extension, are you going to be comfortable giving him like a max contract if he does, develop, right? Even if he doesn't quite develop a 3-point jump shot, would you be comfortable giving him a max contract extension even if he is productive? I had questions about that, and to me, if you can't produce at the 3-point line at the 4 in the modern NBA, and you can't stretch the floor, it's very questionable to me. And I do think that he has the potential. I think he has the framework to develop a jump shot, and today he had proven that he has the fundamentals, he has the ability, and he just needs the confidence behind the jump shot. He just needs to see the ball go through the hoop, right? And I haven't even told you what happened, right? You're probably saying, hey, Jelson, like, what are you saying? What did he do? And if you haven't seen already, he shot 11 3-pointers, right? And he saw 7 of them fall. 7 of them fall. So he had 35 points tonight and 7 3-pointers. Couple blocks, I think 3 blocks, and just doing it all. And this is something I personally love to see. Uh, I got one of my good friends, shout out to Garrett, Super Mario Hoops here on YouTube. He's a really big Bulls fan. And to see him have a guy like this showing this type of potential is super big because, I mean, as long as I've known him, it's really been what do we have to look forward to, right? We had Lonzo Ball and Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan, which was something, but I mean, in the long scheme, they ended up not really being anything. So you want a future franchise building block, and that's something that Caleb Wilson genuinely could be to me. So I think that's super exciting for him and all the Chicago fans out there, fellow Midwest NBA fans. Is something that's super exciting to see in Chicago. And Chicago, when they're decent or good, obviously it's great for the league. We love seeing an area like Chicago where basketball has been rooted in the area, right? We have so many great talents from Chicago coming into the NBA every single year. And it just feels like their actual NBA team over the past, 10 years or so, I would say probably 10 years, almost to the dot, just hasn't been able to get over that hump when it comes to actual talent on their franchise. And I think getting a guy like this is going to be able to change that narrative for the future of their franchise. So obviously, we'll have to see what happens with him. I do think that he does need to prove throughout this year. And I was talking to Super Mario Hoops just a minute ago about how Caleb Wilson as a player, if he could become a respectable three-point shooter this year, that'd be so huge. And it's a lot about confidence, and that's something we talked about and how he felt about Caleb Wilson as a shooter. If he could just stay confident. And he's saying if he shoots 25% from three this year and he takes 4 a game, like you may say, well, the percentage-wise isn't good. But to me, it's that confidence. And that's going to make eventually, first of all, he's got to become a better three-point shooter. If you're shooting that many jump shots, like you just have to eventually develop it. I just feel like it's almost impossible for you not to if you're shooting that decent of a volume at the NBA level. And if you don't, then hey, maybe, as I said, contract extension talks come around, you say, okay, let's stop shooting the 3 ball. If you're still shooting 20% or 25%, let's not do that anymore. But this first year, if you want to shoot, it's not like Chicago is going to be like really, really looking to win anything big this year. And to me, if you can, put the ball into Caleb Wilson's hands from basically all 3 levels and allow him to just say, hey, take these shots, find your best shot and find your spots in the association. I think that's something that'd be super big. But obviously, it is something that we'll have to see what happens. He also mentioned to me that, looking back at a guy like Andre Iguodala, who has never shot particularly like great from the 3-point line, but he was always somebody that you could look at and say like, yeah, he's such a, respectable shooter, right? He's a guy that maybe percentage wise isn't going to blow you out of the water, but if you leave him open, he's going to hit down the shot. And to me, if you can even become that, for Caleb Wilson with everything else he has in his repertoire, I think that's going to be super big for him as a player, both now and in the future. And if the team wants to compete in Chicago, if you have a guy like that, I think it's going to be massive for where the franchise can head, in 5 or 10 years down the line when we see Caleb Wilson truly entering his prime or the back end of his prime. Like, these are things that Chicago needs to see develop if you want this guy to be your franchise player. So to me, just becoming a respectable shooter has been the thing that I need Caleb Wilson to do, for me to be like, hey, he is like that. I mean, I love him as a player, and obviously I had him number 3 on the big board, but there's a reason he wasn't 1 or 2. It was the jump shot to me was like, hey, there's foundation there, but we didn't see the production. So to me, if he had shot, 35% at the 3-point line in college, or maybe even higher than that, I could have had him at that number 1 or number 2 spot on my big board because he had all of the other tools to me, but he just didn't have that. He didn't show that production at the collegiate level. So obviously we'll have to see him do it at the NBA level. And in reality, that's really what matters, right? I mean, I don't care what you shoot at, the collegiate level, because where your real production and where you build your legacy is in the league. And obviously we have a lot of players that, yeah, he had a great college career, but in the NBA, he kind of fills it out. But I think his best basketball is definitely ahead of him as a player. And that's something that's super exciting as a franchise, as a fan, not only of Chicago, but a fan of the NBA in general. And a fan of power forwards, man. Like, because I mean, I feel like the position's like dead, low key. Like I had been talking to another one of my friends, and it was who's a great power forward. We played the 82-0 game. Like, if you had to take a power forward right now, who are you taking? And that was a really difficult question for me because there were some options, obviously, but do you want to, you know, mid 30s Kevin Durant? You want an injury prone Anthony Davis, or do you want one of these younger guys that we don't really know what they're going to be yet in the league? And I feel like the talent, the top end talent at the power forward position has been fizzling out. People are starting to, get to the end of their careers, and we need to see a guy like Caleb Wilson really rejuvenate that position because obviously LeBron is probably going to be retiring in a couple of years here, but we've been saying that forever. I mean, maybe he plays till he's 60. I don't know, but we've been saying that we need a new generation of power forwards in the NBA to really bring the position back. I mean, ever since really Tim Duncan retired, it's been kind of a struggle bus there at that position. So if Caleb Wilson could become that, I think that'd be awesome for the NBA, and both for the NBA and also for that position in general. I think it would inspire a lot of people, younger generation to say, like, embrace the power forward position. I feel like a lot of people want to either be the 3 or the 5 if you're kind of in that middling ground there. But I think that if we could see a guy like Caleb Wilson truly become a generational guy or a franchise guy that could lead you to a championship one day, I think that could actually have implications to the future of the NBA, which is super crazy to say because we're talking about a rookie here. Anyways, I'm rambling here. It is freaking close to midnight in Minnesota, so I gotta go to bed. But I had to talk about this. This video will be coming out either the day of, or sorry, the day after the game happened, or the day after that. So it's gonna be a little bit late, but I had to get my thoughts out about this. But anyways, been your boy Jelson. Remember, like, subscribe if you guys did enjoy. Let me know, and let me know in the comments what you guys think about Caleb Wilson. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.